All right. Look at this beautiful crowd. Could I get everybody's attention this way, and can we wrap up any side conversations? Yeah. So if you're in here for the candidate conversation, you're in the right place. If you're in here to chat and have side conversations or do other things, you're in the wrong place. So make a quick note of what you're here for. I have right here a list of the questions that people signed up for asking from our 5th period and 6th period class. After we give the candidates about 3 minutes for an opening statement, we're going to go straight into the questions that you asked, and I'm going to go to people who have their names on this. I'm going to bring you your computer. You ask your question, they will answer. Straightforward? Excellent. I'll explain all of the snafu that we had today later. Thank you to whoever made it work. You're our hero. So I think that was Ms. Nas who made it happen for us. So can we make a round of applause for Ms. Nas for saving this event? Thank you so much. All right. Without, yes. What? All right. Shall we begin? Who would like to go first?
Ladies first.
All right, folks. Miss Jackson is about to chat first. So we're going to set a timer for 3 minutes for her introduction. We will only be able to hear her if it's totally silent. If you're not silent, I will be asking you to leave during her speech right now. And
good afternoon. So I'm Leronda Jackson. I walk Meadowdale track almost every morning. And I wave at y'all and I say, have a good day. But I'm here today to talk about something I'm doing, which is running for state representative. So I am a mother. I have 2 sons. One is 35. One is 27, coaching at Georgia Tech. I own a business. I own an insurance agency. I have a staff that's holding it down while I'm allowed to run for office. And my husband is a Vietnam veteran and a Trotwood retiree. He taught at Trotwood for 32 years, and he coached wrestling there for 38 years. So I'm very interested in what happens in this community, and the fact that I'm a black woman, I'm very, very interested in what happens in this community and in this school building. Because I know that there are people representing you that may not understand your story or may not care to learn about your story. So I decided to run for office 2 years ago. I live in Inglewood. My opponent lives in Vandalia. And the district that I ran in, I could not win. So it was gerrymandered. I hope you guys have talked about gerrymandering. It's like they're in there having a basketball meeting, and basketball teams have 5 players, and the team that you're about to play, they get to have 10 players, and it's legal. So the Supreme Court ruled in May of this year that that was unconstitutional, and they redrew the lines. And they said, we need to have more blacks, more Democrats, and more people of color in this district. So that's how I got Trotwood and Harrison Township and Jefferson Township and all of Clayton, not just cherry-picked Clayton. And it's very important for you to have a representative that understands what it's like living in your neighborhood, because when they decide where the money goes, when they decide which public school gets the greater funding, when they decide on laws like stand your ground, buy a gun without a permit, without a registration, and get it today, that is something that state representatives do. They are also looking at a woman's right to choose and how far government gets to go into your personal life. So that is what a state rep does, and that's what I'm running for. And when I say running, I'm campaigning. So it's almost like I'm marketing myself. So if many people hear my name, see one of my yard signs, see something on YouTube TV, they might say, oh, that's the lady. I'm going to vote for her because she's speaking what I find to be important. And that's called an agenda. So my agenda is to protect public schools and give them the money they need to function properly. Not take the money and send it to somebody to go to private school when they already live in a great school district. So that is what's happening now in the state of Ohio. There are 99 state reps. I hope you've covered that. I'm running as a Democrat. I'm endorsed by the county and our state. And that just means that my agenda is in line with their agenda and they're supporting me. So 99 state reps and less than 40 are Democrats. So everything is by vote. So if I say, you know what, I think that every kid that gets public attendance, not only should they get free lunch, they should get a stipend every quarter of $200. And I bring this bill and I want to make this a law. If every Democrat agrees and it's less than 40 and we have 99, that means the other 59 disagreed and it's not going anywhere. So it's very important that you all understand what's going on. Now I'm going to admit, I'm 57. I've been out of high school a long time. What I learned in high school, now I got to refresh it. So it's going to come to, you're going to need to know. So I need you all to get involved. I need you to study candidates, what they sound like. I mean, don't your trigger go off if you hear someone on a commercial and you be like, oh, that didn't sound right. I'm offended by that. I don't know if I like that. That's what you'll hear from a candidate. And just the fact that the two of us are the only ones here, that should be a trigger. So if 10 people had an opportunity to come and only 2 came, that should make you feel like what? Maybe you're not important. Maybe your questions aren't important. I got signs all throughout here. However you get to Meadowdale, you're going to pass one of my yard signs. Because I need people to know that I'm running, and that I'm running to represent people who look like me, who sound like me, and are interested in the things that I'm interested in. So don't ever say I don't like politics, because everything is political. Poverty is political. Everything. So I'm Leronda Jackson. Thank you.
And I know for a fact that was more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we'll give you a little 2-minute buffer as well. So.
Okay. My name is David Esrati, and I am not endorsed by the Montgomery County Democratic Party or the State Democratic Party. And there's a reason for that. Because I question leadership. When there are things that aren't right, I question it. And I've been questioning it for a long time. Started out, I questioned why the city took me to court for putting up the wrong kind of a garage door in a house I bought for $14,000 in the city of Dayton. Now, $14,000 in 1986 was still about the price of a cheap car. And I was buying a whole house, and I was going to fix it up, and they took me to court. I went down to City Hall, and they didn't listen. They didn't respond. They just sat there like a brick wall. And so I said, I'm going to run for mayor. That was 1993. And that was the same year that Mike Turner, who is my opponent now, who is in Congress, ran for mayor. And a lot of people confused the two of us. There isn't any confusion anymore. Okay? Mike Turner had me arrested in 1996. Had me arrested for protesting, silent protest at a city commission meeting. It took 2.5 years going through the courts, and he lost every time. Now, I'm going to tell you something. He's a lawyer, and I'm an advertising guy, okay? So apparently I know the law better than the lawyer. The city ended up paying out about $100,000 to my attorneys. I got a little bit of that. I learned, you go to look into a courtroom, the only people who win are the lawyers. Trust me on that, okay? You're going to come out less than what you came in with. The reality is, Mike Turner has been your congressman for the last 20 years, longer than all of you have been alive, because the district is gerrymandered so that he will win. This year, it's the least gerrymandered it's ever been, and I'm still supposed to lose. Now, the big question is are there a lot of very angry women who don't want to lose the right to do what they want with their bodies? Because if they all come and vote, Mike Turner will not be your congressman, and I will be, which will cause a great trouble for both the Democratic Party and for the Republican Party. Why? because when I see things that are wrong, I do something about it. Any of you ever see a basketball net looks like this hanging on a court? Anybody? Green bottom?
No.
No?
No, I've never seen
Never? No one? Okay. Now, the city of Dayton didn't take care of their basketball courts. So what did I do? Instead of buying yard signs when I ran for city commission about 12 years ago, I started hanging free nets and I marked them with green at the bottom. After I didn't win the election, the city decided to spend $1 million to finally fix up their basketball courts, and guess what? They keep nets on the rims now. These nets cost $2 a piece when you buy them 100 at a time. What takes time is to go out there and clean up the court and to hang the net. But it's the little actions that make a difference. Now there's another story, and this is about the person that Ms. Jackson's running against. He was the sheriff of running our jail. And they pepper sprayed an inmate in a 7-point restraint chair, tied up. They went up and started spraying him right in the face. That story made news, and Mr. Plummer said, oh no, Sheriff Plummer said, no, that was an isolated incident. Well, I got wind of another one, and I got the video, and I put it out there. Caught him doing it again. At that point, if I had been your congressman instead of Mike Turner, I would have had the FBI and the DOJ down there taking over the jail and putting the jailers in prison. Because that's not just a violation of our laws, it's a violation of the Geneva Convention. Torture is not okay. When you are arrested, you are innocent until proven guilty. When you are just coming into the jail, you are not guilty, and yet they were pepper spraying an inmate in restraints. That's the kind of man Phil Plummer is, and he's going on now to be promoted first to state rep and possibly Speaker of the House. You have to be informed of these things. You have to know. You have to research. You have to do your homework. Otherwise, evil wins. And I do mean evil. Because I don't want any one of you to ever have to go into jail and get pepper sprayed. If you had asthma, what would happen? You die. It's important. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Round of applause. We have our first question, and this question goes to both candidates. So I'm going to pass it to Damari if you want to introduce yourselves and read the question. These are all questions created by the students in these classes. Yep.
Could you say more about what you do? What do you plan on doing to better help public schools?
What do you do better? What?
Speak up just a little
Could
bit.
you say more about what do you plan on doing to help public schools?
Public schools. Ladies first.
Okay. So as a state rep, I would try to reverse our expanded voucher program. So currently, if you live in the city of Dayton and your child is at Dayton Public Schools and Dayton Public Schools is not performing, you can get voucher money and you can go to Chaminade or Dayton Christian or Kettering Altar or whatever. And so the party that I'm against, my opponent, you don't have to live in a Dayton Public School. You can live in Oakwood, Kettering, Northmont's district, Beaver Creek, and you can still get voucher dollars. So I would fight to end that so they can bring the money back to public schools. I would also stop transporting kids that go to charter schools on a public school bus, because you all have enough issues with transportation than to have to go get some kids that don't even go to a Dayton public school. I think that's ridiculous. Also, there was a lawsuit, and it was already found to be unconstitutional to fund our schools from property tax. So if the average property in Dayton, Ohio is $72,000, you're gonna get property tax from that dollar amount. If the average house in Oakwood is $372,000, you're going to get the percentage of property tax from that property. So you will never be equal. You will never, ever have equal resources. A school nurse every day, the things that you need to function as a school, to be introduced, to go on trips, to do things that other schools do. You won't ever have that because our schools are funded by property tax. So that is what I would do regarding our public schools. I also don't believe a teacher should carry a firearm. So I will vote against that. If you want a firearm in the building, then you better hire the security staff to protect our children. And it grieves me to think that if you all have shooter drills, we had tornado drills. We have fire drills. A shooter was not even in your remote idea. So I think that there's things that we could do to promote safer schools.
All right, so there's a difference between state house and federal, okay? We believe in this crazy thing called home rule and letting states make their own policies, especially in terms of education. There are some things that are done on a federal level. There are more things, it's in terms of how things are funded. One of the things that we absolutely have to start working at is making sure that there is funding starting when the prenatal all the way to kindergarten to make sure children are in a safe environment, have nutritious meals, be prepared to go to school, including preschool. A lot of those programs are federally funded. Under the Trump administration, he brought in Betsy DeVos as the director of the Department of Education, who basically wanted to dissolve the Department of Education. I personally do not believe in having this pushed down to the lower levels. We have 618 school districts in the state of Ohio with 618 different school boards, 618 different superintendents, treasurers. I think it's a colossal waste. I believe there are things we could do to help teachers, like provide their education for free. Right now, there's supposedly a program, and it hasn't always been funded properly, that if you teach for 10 years in public schools, your college debt would be erased. Part of the problem is the cost of college is way too high. These are things the federal government can address, and they're things we need to address. Because if you do not have an educated, informed electorate, you do things like elect Donald Trump, okay? That's what happens. When stupid people go and vote, you get Donald Trump and all the rest of it. And we have to fix that. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Next question comes from Esther.
Well, when it comes to child abuse, and I know I grew up, I know what it's like to be told what goes on in this house stays in this house. But I definitely believe that you should have the teachers and counselors at school where you can feel safe enough to have a conversation with them without repercussions, whether it be a home visit. Something has to take place. But I also know that with Dakota Collins, everybody talked about that case, but he's not the only one that cases can fall through the cracks because maybe a worker's caseload is too heavy, or the police, they have a role in it, the schools have a role in it, sometimes even our healthcare systems have a role in it. They all do need to talk. People should have known that he was going through something or that he wasn't at school. So I believe in my heart that most parents are doing the best they can, but sometimes their best isn't good enough. And so the number one priority has to be the child. So I definitely would believe in getting that child out of that household. But we got to make it safe, and you have to believe a child. So I think that there are times that sometimes children go through things and people don't believe them. And I think that that's really wrong, because then you'll just stop talking about it and you'll just suffer in silence.
I grew up in a community that was very progressive and very different. And I myself didn't know that I was in a very different place than the rest of the world. I grew up in Cleveland Heights in the late 70s. I'm pretty old. And it was a middle class community. 25% of the students were black, 25% were Jewish, and the 50 other percent were all from all over the world. We had 36 National Merit Scholars in my high school alone. Dayton Public Schools is lucky to have a couple every several years. I thought this was normal. I thought I lived in Leave It to Beaver land. I was wrong. As time has gone on, and I've stayed friends with some of the people I grew up with, I found out that there were girls that were being molested by their fathers, by their uncles, by their brothers. It happens everywhere. And it gets covered up everywhere. And I gotta tell you, it's not that statement, that old African village, it takes a village to raise a child, is true. We all have to work together so that people feel safe to come out and tell somebody when something is wrong. And one of the things we've seen in the last 3 years during the pandemic is everybody went home, they stayed away from everybody else, we stopped doing things together, and we saw a lot of children end up without parents, having to be raised by their grandparents because their parents died from COVID, or people went to prison for offenses and there's nobody left to raise the kids and they're in foster care. We have done a lousy job of a couple things. One is mental health care in this country. This is all one big issue. And first and foremost, there is no reason any of you should have any less access to health care than your congressman. Period. That means health care for all, no more insurance companies, no more arguing with an insurance company. You have doctors to take care of this who are trusted and who can make these diagnoses and can help people get help. Okay? That's going to be the best solution of all of it. But we have to take a different approach to how we raise our community together. Okay? It hasn't been working the way it's working. You shouldn't have to have both parents working 2 jobs to be able to keep a roof over your head. You shouldn't have to worry about health care access. You shouldn't have to worry about the cost of medicine. These are things we can solve in this country, and we're not, because we're more interested in making billionaires richer than making sure everybody, all boats rise, and we're in good shape. Hope that answers your question. Okay.
Equal rights? Okay, equal rights for just in general? Okay. Equal rights as a state rep. So you have to realize a state legislator, they write bills and laws in their state. So I would have to say equal rights for women, of course, is the number one thing that women are upset about, and that is the right to choose what they do if they have an unwanted pregnancy, whether it was by attack, rape, illness, whatever. That is number one. Equal rights mean I get to say what happens without asking my doctor or without asking a legislator, because I don't think that government belongs in our personal lives like that. Equal rights for blacks. When I look at equal rights and I look at the industry I'm in, it's not really fair. And one of the things that I fight about, and I'm on a bunch of diversity councils, if you are a convicted felon, you can't get life insurance. And I think that's terrible, because a person may be a convicted felon, they did their time, they paid their restitution, they've done everything they needed to do, but the insurance industry never forgives that person. And so I'm just gonna keep it real. When you black, sometimes you don't get forgiven. You can make a mistake and it stays with you forever. When you're not black, oh, it's okay. You know what? He just was having a bad day. And so the reason why it's important to have representatives that balance it out is because we can speak out and we can speak up. I can say, well, let me go back. Governor Kasich bragged about balancing our budget. He wanted to be president. He wanted to run. He didn't make it. Trump made it. But one of the things he did was bragged about balancing the budget. But in order to balance the budget, he had to cut money out of our streets, our cities. And so when people complain about Trotwood streets and we complain about Dayton and Salem and all the beat up streets, it's because they don't have the money in the budget anymore, because the money was removed with the stroke of a pen. And so when you get these potholes and they tear up your car and all that kind of stuff, that comes from a decision. And so I am very grieved when I have to drive to Huber Heights to go to Chick-fil-A or go get something to eat or go buy something when none of that's over here. And I'm okay saying that, because at the end of the day, if you see me coming down the street, you don't know that I'm Leronda, you don't know that I'm a Christian, you don't know anything about me, but you see a black woman walking down the street. And so I do not believe we have representation that's good enough for us. And so when you talk about equal rights, what about a child's equal rights? What about a teacher's rights? So after the tornado, I adopted a school at Trotwood.
If you want to stick around for a moment and chat with folks, welcome. If you have to get to something right after school, thank you for coming through. Let's do one last round of applause for the candidates.
Yesterday, did they count for this 9 weeks or last 9 weeks?
The last one.
Welcome to the
Great job, everybody. Thank you.
Is this thing on, dude?
Thank you.
Nope, well, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not. I'm not appreciated by them. All right.
And the questions were free.
You
You think I could be the next governor?